I'm Michael Grant. I'll be chairing this important session presented by CIHR on designing for the future. It's going to be all about HIV research funding, so it's a very important subject for most of us that are here. First of all, I'm going to just tell you how the session will work. We'll have two speakers sequentially. After the first speaker, there will be some time for some questions directed to that particular presentation. And then after the second speaker, there will be time for some questions directed to that speaker and time for a general discussion or raise points or ask questions of either of the speakers and to raise issues in general. There will be volunteers in the audience that will bring microphones for the people that are going to ask the questions. So we'll ask that you use a microphone and we'll try and direct them over to you. So we'll have two speakers. The first speaker is Dr. Jane Oban. Dr. Oban is a professor of molecular genetics at Faculty of Medicine, University of Toronto, past scientific director and CEO of the Canadian Arthritis Network Centres of Excellence, and past scientific director of the Institute for Musculoskeletal Health and Arthritis. But the reason that she's here today is that since July 2011, she's been the Chief Scientific Officer and the VP Research at CIHR. In that position, she's responsible for the oversight of all scientific affairs. She provides guidance on new directives related to science and technology and oversees all aspects of adjudication of grants and awards. So we're very happy to have Dr. Oban here to speak to us today about CIHR designing for the future.
Thanks very much, Michael, and welcome everyone. Bonjour à tous. What my role is today is to really give you an update on a lot of things that are happening at CIHR. I'm going to introduce the new strategic plan. I'm going to try to address questions about CIHR's overall budget, not just the HIV AIDS part of the budget. Touch on some of the changes that are happening to our institute model, and then update you on the programmatic and peer review changes that we're undergoing. So, Roadmap 2. From 2008-9 to 2013-14, CIHR's strategic plan, Roadmap 1, really set us on a path of transformative change in signaling all the reforms that we're undergoing now with both the changes to the investigator-initiated program and the strategic programming at CIHR. So in tackling Roadmap 2, we actually chose not to do an entire rewrite or revisioning, but rather do a refresh. And the refresh is caught in this graphic as reminding you at the top of the pyramid that we remain driven by the mandate of CIHR, which is to not just create new knowledge, but to translate it into better health and healthcare for Canadians. The kind of purple color of the pyramid on the left-hand side reflects that an important and the first strategic direction of CIHR remains investigator-initiated research, creation of new knowledge across the breadth of our disciplines. The purple part of the pyramid reflects the strategic directions of CIHR, where we really try to mobilize the information that we have and the new information that we need to gain into applied improvements and innovations for health and healthcare. The green section across the bottom, which is labeled Achieving Organizational Excellence, is really to remind me to tell you that increasingly we want CIHR to be an evidence-based organization, to use our own data to justify the decisions that we're making and to share data with the communities so that they understand exactly why we're going the directions we're going. It also encapsulates that we need to continue to promote research integrity and ethics in all that we do and all that we support and fund. So just a little bit more on strategic direction 1. which, as I said, is about investigator-initiated research. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that the slides actually, most of them will have a question at the top. They're the kinds of questions that we get asked all the time, and somewhere on the slide, sometimes in the bottom, captured in a box, because it's very important, is a fundamental answer to the question. And so one of the questions that CIHR gets asked all the time is, do we care anymore about investigator-initiated research? And the answer is, not only do we care, we're committed to it and support it with a fair bit of the overall budget, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the other part that's captured on this slide is where we're going in Strategic Direction 1. And it highlights the fact that we'll continue to pilot and implement the changes to the open programs into two schemes, the foundation scheme and project scheme. It signals that we'll continue to pilot and build the new peer review processes that are not committee-based, but rather application-focus-based. And a new bullet that didn't appear actually in Roadmap 1 is around training and signaling that CIHR wants to convene and lead discussions with other funders and with our academic homes and with other stakeholders about how we're training the next generation. Are we actually preparing people for the diverse and multiple kinds of careers and changes in careers that are happening as science and knowledge translation so rapidly changes? The Strategic Direction 2, as I mentioned, is about using the knowledge, mobilizing it for to tackle gap areas or areas that really need attention, such as HIV, AIDS. The important words on this slide are about to achieve success in the Strategic Direction 2, you really need to do it in partnership. We need to form strategic alliances or we won't succeed. And so for CIHR, it's also about enabling and ensuring we're not putting barriers to a multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral kind of research teams, and that we're aligning the budgets for strategic directions to the important gaps and areas that are identified through Science Council discussions with our partners and stakeholders. So on this slide, I've just outlined the 4 strategic priorities within the strategic direction of Roadmap 2. And I'll just quickly run down the words at the left-hand side: enhanced patient experiences and outcomes through health innovation, health and wellness for Aboriginal peoples, a healthier future through preventive action, and improved quality of life for persons living with chronic conditions. Now, of course, within those 4 large areas, specific initiatives are put in operations. So, for example, the HIV/AIDS initiative actually spans across multiple ones of these strategic priorities, but certainly improve quality of life for persons living with chronic conditions. The strategy for patient-oriented research, on the other hand, would map primarily to enhanced patient experiences and better outcomes. I won't read all the words on the right-hand side, but I hope that what you'll see in the wording of the priorities is not just a focus on treating or curing disease, but it's important for us to be moving towards preventing disease, having healthier lives, and promoting well-being. In addition, all of the priorities have a vision of multidisciplinary work spanning all of the pillars or themes of work within CIHR's mandate. So I want to just now address perhaps a couple rumors about CIHR's budget, and also show you how the budget is broken down to achieve the strategic directions that I just commented upon. So in contrast to some of the rumors that were being written about earlier this year, CIHR's budget remains around $1 billion a year. It has not been cut in half, as some of the articles were suggesting. So of that $1 billion, something less than 6%, the little turquoise wedge at the top, about 5.8% now, in fact, is operational costs of CIHR, one of the lowest operational costs of any funding agency in the world. And that's the tranche that supports the people who work inside CIHR and all the peer review processes that we carry on. Now, together, the darker blue, red, and green tranches, or wedges, are investigator-initiated, so approximately 70% of the budget of CIHR remains investigator-initiated. The blue is actually investigator-initiated operating grants, and that's at about 50% and rising slightly, as I'll show you in the next slide. The red, at about 17%, are training and investigator or salary award programs. They're such things as the Canada Graduate Scholarships and Tri-Council programs as listed on the left-hand part of the slide. They include the Canada Research Chairs, Canada Excellence Research Chairs, the Banting and Vanier Fellowships. The green wedge at 7% are government-mandated, targeted strategic directions, and that's, for example, is where the HIV/AIDS part of the budget resides. The purple wedge at about 20% of CIHR's budget is the strategic envelope. It comprises the strategic initiative budgets of each of the institutes, as well as other strategic funding envelopes that CIHR has and continues to use in a strategic way. So, an important message, though, is that although this is plotted as just the investigator-initiated part of the budget, the big blue wedge at about 50%, an important message is that since approximately 2008, the budget has been relatively flat, and the investigator-initiated part of the budget has been relatively flat. Recognizing that a lot of the new monies coming into CIHR have been targeted to important areas by our parliamentarians, Governing Council made the decision to move $10 million a year, every year, cumulatively, for the next 5 years into the investigator-initiated part of the pie. So you'll see small increases, and we're in year two and a half of that $10 million per year increase. That money had to come out of the strategic envelope, and in fact, it had to come out of the non-targeted strategic envelope, so that purple wedge that I showed you a minute ago. And yet, Governing Council, and I think the Science Council and the rest of us trying to implement the strategic vision of CIHR, believe that it's very important to support investigator-initiated, bottoms-up, curiosity-driven research, so that the entire pipeline moving to more strategic and applied research remains robust. What I thought I would share with you, and why I've shown you the investigator-initiated part of the budget, is to show you that the HIV/AIDS research community is doing extremely well. If you look at the histogram, you will notice that the dark blue is the HIV/AIDS initiative money. The light blue is money that is coming out of the investigator-initiated envelope that I showed you a minute ago. So over half of the funding going to HIV/AIDS research is coming out of investigator-initiated envelope. That's good news, right? It means that the strategic envelope is actually catalyzing and helping synergize with another large envelope of funding. So I want to very quickly address changes that we're making to our institute model. They've caused a lot of confusion and a lot of unnecessary concerns. So I want to spend just a couple of minutes explaining that part of the CIHR Act explicitly requires Governing Council to review the role and slate of institutes every 5 years, and it hadn't been done since CIHR was initiated in the year 2000. So over longer than a 2-year period, actually, Governing Council implemented an internal working group comprising scientific directors, and an external working group of representatives of other funders, of our academic homes, of other stakeholders, including the charities, et cetera. And those groups provided reports to Governing Council, which met in retreat mode in August 2014, and came up with 5 directional recommendations for CIHR to implement. I'm not going to go through them all, but one was an important one, saying that the 13 institutes that we currently have should remain at this point in time, but that processes should be set up to help Governing Council continue that exercise of looking at the number and the relevance of institutes. But 2 that have been talked about a lot, and as I mentioned, caused concern, are actually linked directional areas that Governing Council wanted us to act upon. One is to restructure the Institute Advisory Boards from 13 boards to a fewer or lesser number of boards that would advise more than one institute. The rationale is to increase the scope of the vision of advice being given to institutes and assure that it's multidisciplinary, multisectoral, crossing stakeholder groups, et cetera, so that the kind of advice being given to scientific directors and Science Council would reflect that broader vision and not be siloed. That is to help Science Council and scientific directors to make business cases against the Common Fund. Now, the Common Fund actually reflects half of the budget of each institute, so half of 8.6 or $4.3 million, or 59.4, I think, $1 million a year, going into a Common Fund or a Roadmap Accelerator Fund, against which business cases would be made and help Science Council prioritize within its strategic envelope. Now, we already do that to a certain extent. They're called signature initiatives, and this is to systematize that kind of thinking and to continue to work towards doing perhaps fewer strategic initiatives, but putting bigger envelopes, longer-term vision against the priorities, so as to try to maximize the impacts of what we're doing. And I won't go through all the verbiage at the bottom, but it's about being sure that when we prioritize, we're taking into account other things that are happening in Canada and elsewhere, so that we're truly not just duplicating, but addressing gaps in the best possible way. So now I want to move to, just for the remainder of the presentation, to talk about where we are with transitioning from our currently 12 different investigator-initiated programs to 2, the foundation scheme and the project scheme. The green arrow shows you that we're at April 2015, and that reflects that we're partway through the process of piloting new programs and peer review processes. We're phasing in new programs, so the first foundation scheme pilot has just finished stage 2 of the adjudication, of the multi-stage adjudication, and that we are beginning to phase out existing programs. So the transitional OGP is the last of CIHR's OGP competitions in the old format. So an important part of this slide is how crucial the pilots are. And we've been piloting a lot. I've listed 2 that have been completed, a pilot on the fellowship scheme and knowledge synthesis scheme. A second pilot on the knowledge synthesis program is underway right now, as are other pilots. And what I want to do with this slide is really, first of all, thank people for taking part in pilots and for filling out surveys, but also assure you that the pilots are important and that we are making changes and tweaking the design that actually took over 2 or 3 years to design in the first place, but we continue to use the pilots to improve the implementation. So, I told you earlier that part of the change is to move away from committee-based peer review to application-focused review. And that's a scary thought for a lot of people who were worried that by moving away from committees and people losing their committees, that certain kinds of work might fall between the cracks. This slide is just showing you preliminary data from stage 1 of the first foundation pilot, which was done in a non-committee world, but based on matching applications to peer reviewers, to show you that the historical data are in blue, the percent submitted applications in each of the themes, biomedical, clinical, health services, and policy research, and socio-cultural, environmental, and pop health theme. The green shows you the percent submitted applications for the foundation scheme, and the magenta color shows you the percent success. So the important message of this slide is all 4 pillars came in, and all 4 pillars had comparable success rate. There's no statistically significant difference between the success rate across those pillars. So an important message is, I think, that the system will work. It is application focused. Success rate is driven then by application pressure. So all of us need to think about what do we want to apply for and get it in there. Now, obviously, the foundation scheme pilot is not one of the hugest changes that's occurred, but the hugest change that has occurred, I would say, in CIHR's history. And so we have, again, put in place surveys, surveying applicants, surveying stage 1 peer reviewers, and surveying the virtual chairs. I want to thank you again for those who participate in these pilots. The survey data is incredibly helpful as we go forward, and I want to be a little proud of the fact that 75 to 80% of people surveyed are actually responding, so that really gives us a good sense of whether processes are working or not. So now, just to show you a little bit of the preliminary data that's available from stage 1, and we're in the process of accumulating the same data for stage 2. The color code is the same on a couple slides here. The salmon color is neutral. Light green towards darker green is agree, slightly agree, or agree strongly, and vice versa. The purple colors are disagree slightly, disagree, or disagree strongly. And so applicants were asked, for the first time for CIHR, you're filling in a structured application form. And applicants were asked, was it easy to use, was it intuitive, and that overall a structured application process works. And you will see, so if you look at the salmon color neutrality, about midpoint of neutral is 75% or higher. So quite a few applicants actually liked having a structured application form. We asked peer reviewers, do you like having a structured application form to facilitate your review? And again, if you look at where neutral is, it's even higher, at about 85% or so. So a lot of peer reviewers felt it helped them do the peer review to have a structured application in front of them. But you'll see at the bottom, when peer reviewers were asked, okay, now you're using a structured peer review form, which we've never had before at CIHR. So is using a structured form making it easier for you to review? And are you able to provide the kind of feedback that you want to applicants? You'll see that there's slightly less satisfaction with peer reviewers having to fill in a structured application form. Now, some of this may be change management. People need to get used to the fact that they're not writing long discourses that we have typically written at CIHR and other funding agencies. But there may be other elements at play here. So we're drilling into what is it that people didn't like about having structured peer review. Is it working for some communities and not others? And we'll use that information to tweak the structured peer review forms. So all of these dates are online, and I won't read everyone out to you, just to remind you that by the middle of May, people will be hearing about whether they've moved on from stage 2 to stage 3 of the foundation scheme. But it's also to give you a heads up that the second pilot is coming with a registration process that will start in the summer for the second foundation scheme pilot. And there are eligibility requirements for the second pilot, as there was for the first, to help us manage competition pressure until we get through the transition. Now, big question in everyone's mind is, how are you going to split the money between Foundation Scheme Pilot 1 and the transitional OGP? And we've got a $500 million or $500 million budget to split between the two competitions. We are modeling 150 to 210 foundation scheme awards, and modeling 450 to 600 transitional OGPs. Those ranges will narrow pretty shortly as we're doing the detailed budget analysis right now, but it's to be, the important message is we want to be fair in allocating sufficient budget across the two programs so that there's some fairness in the fact that two competitions are being run in parallel. But the other message of this slide is that in contrast to a lot of the concerns and modeling that was happening before the transitional OGP, application pressure, application number did not go way up in the transitional OGP. In fact, for the first time in 3 to 4 years, so 7, 8, 9 competitions, for the first time, application pressure went down in the transitional OGP, or in the OGP program. It went down by about 6%. One interpretation of the data is that we have started siphoning people off into the foundation scheme, and that was part of the intent. But there may be other issues at play here, so we'll continue to monitor application pressure and report back in the second pilot of the foundation scheme and the first project scheme pilot. So now what about the project scheme? The funding opportunity for the first pilot of the project scheme is up on the website. Please take a chance to look at it. I won't read all the dates, but just to let you know that the registration for the first project scheme pilot will be January 18th, 2016. Now, the other heads up that I want to remind people, I said we have 12 currently independent operating kind of programs that are being rolled into the foundation or project scheme. This lists some of the ones that are disappearing as standalone programs, such things as knowledge synthesis or proof of principle 1 and 2. This is up on the website, but the competition launches for these, for the last competitions of this sort, are coming up in the summer, and the anticipated deadline dates for all of those independent programs coming up in the fall and winter. Now, when these disappear, the parameters of the project scheme will accommodate all of them. As I showed you earlier, they're being piloted on these programs to ensure that they work, and their envelopes are moving with them as well into the foundation and project scheme. So it's not that money is disappearing from the system. All of that will roll into the envelope for investigator-initiated research. So just to end, obviously, it remains absolutely crucial that we have the best peer review that we can possibly have. And an important part of the design is the College of Reviewers. And the College of Reviewers isn't just a super database of names from Canada and internationally. but it reflects a change in philosophy of how we manage peer review at CIHR and how we work with the community to continue to improve the quality of peer review. So elements like a structured recruitment process where we work with our academic homes to share information on who's currently reviewing and who else should be in the system is underway. Training and mentoring materials, we have been preparing a lot of training and guidance documents for applicants and peer reviewers for the new systems, but we want to continue to build training and mentoring to enhance the quality of peer review. Quality assurance, having a systematized way of looking at how people are following peer review rules or policies and actually doing remediation if people aren't following the rules, or if people simply can't be retrained, kicking them out of the college. And finally, recognition programs. So again, working with our academic homes to continue to deliver the message that excellent peer review is how excellent science gets funded. We need to recognize that within our academic homes in terms of tenure and promotion kind of principles as well. Finally, just to mention to you that we've been working with an external advisory group to outline details under the college program that I've just summarized. And many of you will know names on the list, but Marty Schechter, for example, is someone who would be well known to this particular audience. But the other important part of this slide is to tell you that there are, it's not just a database, as I said. We need expert advice from the external community to be sure that we're recruiting appropriately across all the disciplines that CIHR funds. And so we will be putting out a call for people to express interest in having roles like expert cluster leads to help with many of the key functions within the college. And that's it for me. Happy to answer a few questions now, I guess, and then again later.
Thanks, Jane. Take up to 5 minutes now to ask questions directly related to Dr. Robin's presentation, and there'll be more opportunities after the next presentation.
And I can't see hands with the lights here.
I see one there.
One
Okay.
at the back on the right.
Okay.
The turquoise blue and the red
The turquoise
area?
blue, yes.
Do you see the turquoise blue and the red being a little bit, I guess, bigger in the near future, like regarding First Nation or traditional
Oh, you're talking about the
knowledge?
budget pie?
Yeah.
You're talking about the dark blue, not the turquoise. Turquoise is operational. The dark blue at about 50%, and the red, which are training and salary award programs. Do I anticipate them getting bigger? Well, I think I mentioned that we're moving money up to, in another 3 years out, being $50 million richer in the investigator-initiated operating grants part of the envelope. Yeah. The training and salary award programs, in mentioning the training strategy to you that we're undertaking now, the strategy is about the way we're training, not so much whether we're moving new money into it. Having said that, we can move other strategic budget into additional training programs if we want. We're certainly, with the other agencies, with the Tri-Council, continuing to make cases, as we do for the budgets overall, but cases for the importance of continuing to train. So that's what I can tell you for today.
Yeah, well, the biggest step, I guess, is training for community outbase, such as I guess, going outside the box, various, I know, with HIV and hepatitis C and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also looking beyond that with, through ceremony and stuff like that, where we can actually find ways on figuring out this academic and actually helping the people that are in need,
Right.
such as people that are drug users or else people
Yeah.
that are suffering through traumatic experiences by looking through a different outreach,
Right.
such as ceremonial use. And that's why I only mention with, with any type of budget that you see that's realistic as a goal in the future. That way we can stop this epidemic here in Canada.
Right.
And
So the short answer to your question, because you've raised lots of very important issues, is to remind us all that CIHR continues to fund across broadly 4 themes of research. In fact, I haven't shown you a budget breakdown of a further budget breakdown that shows changes to the amount that we're spending on intervention or implementation kind of science kind of programs, which is increasing actually quite dramatically. And those intervention and implementation programs are, a great many of them, if not all of them, are community-based and working across multiple, not just research disciplines, but multiple sectors. So it remains an incredibly important part of CSR's thinking, and it is growing quite dramatically. I can see hands.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah.
It's Trevor Hart from Ryerson.
Yep.
Before we spoke about kind of how disciplinary norms might actually be different, and when you're being reviewed by people of the wrong discipline, even if they are in theme 4,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a kitchen sink of disciplines,
Yeah.
You might end up getting critiques that are based upon somebody else's disciplinary norms. The other problem that HIV researchers, some people might deal with, is the whole community-based research thing. So if you're being evaluated as a community-based researcher against folks that are not community-based researchers, you'll be evaluated based upon how many publications did you get and how high was the impact of those journals, instead of being evaluated on what was the actual community impact of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so for those of us that are doing work that's actually changing things in the community and changing how health services are delivered,
Right.
you might get a critique, hypothetically, that it was too early for the results because they haven't finished their RCT yet, so it doesn't count.
Right.
So it was kind of like based upon like who cares about the community-based stuff. It's all about the traditional metrics, and that's okay, but then we should just say community-based researchers need not apply.
So thanks, and we've recently spoken about all of this. Look, your points are really well taken, and I want to make 2 quick points in response. One is that application-focused review is about matching applications to peers. So matching community-based or participatory research applications with the appropriate peer reviewers, which doesn't always happen on committees, but which, if we make the College of Reviewers system work well, you wouldn't be being peer reviewed by other than like-minded people. The second, though, piece of it is, look at the materials that are on the website for project scheme and foundation scheme. You will see that the definitions of productivity are far broader than typically used in the past around X number of publications in journals of impact factor X. But the intent is to actually give guidance to applicants and peer reviewers to talk about the other kinds of impacts, as you've mentioned, and to use that kind of lens in both the application and peer review process. So take a look at the materials and if you've piloted as applicants or peer reviewers, fill in the survey and tell us what didn't work in terms of the wording so that it can be made more appropriate. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Marc Ouellet. Dr. Ouellet's a full professor at the Centre de Recherche en Infectiologie at Laval University. His research focuses on antimicrobial resistance, specifically in protozoan parasites such as Leishmania. He has earned a number of prestigious awards, including a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Antimicrobial Resistance and membership in the Royal Society of Canada and Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. Since 2010, and the reason that he's here today, Dr. Ouellet has been director of the Institute of Infection and Immunity, where he leads research initiatives in a number of areas, including the initiatives for hepatitis C and HIV/AIDS. And he'll talk to us about them now.
So thank you, Michael. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Actually, I cannot, I think in the last 5 years and a half, I've been to many of the HIV meetings, and now when I go to the room, I know probably much more than 50% of the people in the audience. So I still have 2 years and a half to go, and I hope that I'll know the other 50%. So it's a pleasure for me here to present quite a piece of work of several years, actually, about the HIV/AIDS Research Initiative Strategic Plan. So every 5 years, we try to arrive with a quinquennial plan, and this is the result of a lot of work, and we'll try to present that in a very short manner. Also, we will present some of the recent funding opportunities that we had and some that are upcoming that actually could be of interest for people involved with community program science and implementation science. So I control the slides. So here's for the new strategic plan, the vision, the mission, and the mandate. And I like the vision. I like the vision of 1220. It's that Canadian-led research will have its most significant impact to date on alleviating the burden of HIV/AIDS epidemic in Canada and globally. So I think this is a bold statement, it's a great vision, and hopefully we will be able to achieve that. We have a mission that is to provide national leadership in the support and facilitation of HIV/AIDS research, capacity building, partnership, and knowledge translation that contribute to reducing the transmission and progression of HIV, improving the lives of people living with or susceptible to HIV/AIDS, and finding a cure. This is a little long as a mission. Maybe we should shorten that a little bit. And then our mandate is to identify priorities for and administer HIV/AIDS research support and fulfillment of CIHR partnerships responsibilities within the federal initiative to address HIV/AIDS in Canada. So I'll describe the plan, and you will see the alignment. I think the interesting alignment with also the overall CIHR plan, and you will see how there's those integrations. So we had a number of values. La première était sur la collaboration. Nous pensons que c'est important qu'on regarde, qu'on soit responsable, qu'on soit éthique et également qu'on respecte les différents partenaires avec lesquels on va travailler. L'excellence va toujours primer au niveau des IRSC, donc que ce soit au niveau scientifique, mais aussi au niveau du transfert des connaissances. The inclusiveness, so those with a stake in HIV/AIDS research and ensuring the meaningful inclusion of those living with and at risk of HIV. Innovation, so new ideas, approaches, and practice. And transparency and accountability. So I think this is a value of CIHR, both in the decision-making, managing conflicts of interest, and performance measurement. I've been 5 years and a half at CIHR, and I have to say that I'm very proud of one of this great value. This is something that I knew when I was a researcher. You're often not happy about the result, but you know that it was fair, it was transparent. And when you get it, then you're very happy. So the HIV/AIDS Research Initiative, there's 5 big components, if you want, of this. And this is basically in the initiative, in the federal initiative, it's quite prescriptive of how we're going to do it and how much and so on. So we know that we have, as part of our mandate, as part of the Treasurer Board rules, we have to have biomedical and clinical research. We have a stream also for health services and population health. We have a stream, and this is quite unique to the HIV initiative, a community-based research program, which actually there are 2 arms, the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginals. I'm not sure how we call the non-Aboriginal, is it? General stream. We have also the Canadian HIV Trial Network, And finally, the Canadian HIV vaccine initiative. So 5 components to the HIV initiative to be able to move forward. So we had to put that into consideration for the new quinquennial strategic plan of 2015 to 20. So there were a lot of consultation. Probably most of you were consulted. So there was a national consultation, May, June 2014, interviews, focus group. I did participate in some of those focus groups that I remember in Newfoundland at the last CAHR meeting. Online survey, 475 respondents. So this is quite a take-home to be able to inform the new strategic plan, because it's our strategic plan. The development of draft strategic plan that started in fall 2014, document development, review, strategic planning workshop. Here, not written, but I think we want to acknowledge all of you that were involved, especially we have an advisory board called CHRAC that has been very key in helping us in moving forward. I see many of the CHRAC members here, and I thank them for their leadership and their support in moving forward on this. Finally, we have to review, finalize the plan, and this took some time with external consultation, public posting, partner discussions, and finally, internally at CIHR. And here I want to acknowledge the support of Jane Aubin, who has really helped us in moving forward and trying to further be strategic about the HIV initiative strategic plan. And she's been a very strong supporter so that we can move forward on this. So now we are what is indicated in blue, so a different color. So it's a big event for us. It's the first time that we will present that publicly, at least that I present that publicly, because I've heard that Jennifer did present that yesterday, but at the CAHR meeting that we are showing the strategic plan. And then the challenge will be to implement and monitor this in the next 5 years, and we're developing metrics now at CIHR to really look at the impact that our initiatives will have. Donc, il va y avoir quelques diapositives maintenant pour vraiment décrire quel est ce plan stratégique 15-20 et particulièrement les nouvelles directions stratégiques. Dans un premier temps, it will be to enable discovery research. Second, to mobilize research evidence. And thirdly, to promote leadership and stakeholder engagement and accountability in HIV research. So for the people that have listened carefully at what Dr. Aubin presented, there's a lot of interactions between those new strategic directions and the general plan at CIHR, but here really focused on HIV research and knowledge translation. So first, enable discovery research. So it's to develop new biomedical, behavioral, and system approaches to reduce HIV transmission. 1B, to improve understanding of HIV to slow its progression and mitigate its impact on the health and well-being of people living with HIV. And finally, C, to train and support a strong and diverse community of researchers. So this, I think, speaks to some of the points that were raised in the discussion that Jane bragged on. So it's really across disciplines, across sectors that we want to enable discovery research. The second direction is to mobilize research evidence. This will strengthen the prevention of HIV and other sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections in key populations by funding the development, uptake, and evaluations of evidence-informed initiatives, programs, and practices. 2B, to improve health outcomes for people living with HIV by supporting the development, uptake, and evaluation of models of care. And finally, to strengthen the capacity of researchers, decision makers, frontline workers, and organizations to apply research evidence. So this is our second direction, mobilize research evidence. The third direction is, and third and last direction, is leadership and stakeholder engagement and accountability. So one of the things that often I bring at Science Council is the involvement of the stakeholders in the HIV field, and really to take that as an example for other areas to try to move forward together on the research agenda that will have an impact. So 3A, understand and address perspectives and priorities of key populations. 3B, continue to enhance the initiative's leadership in national and international partnerships. And this is something really that we're really taking advantage of all those international partnerships that one can make. And 3C, to refresh the initiative's performance measurements and accountability framework in support of the strategic plan. So really the initiatives will, that hopefully we will bring further in the next 5 years, will really be inspired by the strategic plan that we have, and we want to have this cross-fertilization. So this is, you know, in a nutshell, the plan that I want to produce. I forgot to take one of those. Malcolm, can you just give? Yeah, okay. So Jennifer Gunning, that everybody knows, I have this nice little flyer that will be at the booth of CIHR. So in a nutshell, what I've presented is français, anglais, c'est recto verso, will be available. It's also all in your little blue folder that you have this one pager that I see that everybody has read very carefully. So I think this is very, this is the result of many months of work of a lot of people, and we are very proud of this strategic plan for the next 5 years. So now I'll just shift gear, if you allow me, Mr. Chair, and present a little bit about some of the funding opportunities that just happened to show the breadth of funding opportunities that we have, and one upcoming one that we are very excited about, and that actually we had a session this morning to discuss of how to move forward with this one. So some highlights on recent and upcoming strategic investment in HIV AIDS research. So one is a partnership with the Gates Foundation. So this was a great possibility of this international linkages, and as you will see, it was within the Canadian HIV Vaccine Initiative, so CHVI, and with CHVI we have the good fortune of collaborating with many departments within the Government of Canada, with the Gates Foundation, and this is being facilitated by the Alliance Coordinating Office that is head in Winnipeg. And one of the call was about mucosal immunology for HIV vaccine development, and that was in partnership with the Gates Foundation. And these are the 3 awardees. They are smiling because it's large teams. International teams also. There's a lot of international ramifications, as one can see. Some stakeholders also, both national and international, and we're very happy of this mucosal immunology grant. Another initiative on the team grants on boys and men's health that was recently found. Similarly, people are smiling because they're happy about those initiatives. And this is a great partnership with CANFAR and with OHDM to be able to move forward on this very important topic, also related to HIV AIDS initiative. Also, CIHR is supporting a number of infrastructure and support that we believe are vital for the research networks. The first thing that I would like to see is from coast to coast, from west to east, or from east to west, north, south. There's a lot of little dots. So that means that really those initiatives that are supporting HIV research are located throughout Canada. The first one, well, not the first one in order here, because they're all equally important, is CTN, so the HIV Clinical Trial Network, that is in operation for more than 25 years. I mean, they were renewed now, and I think they're doing excellent work in clinical research, but also more and more into intervention research, also a nice change. We had also a number of centers, of research centers in the field of health systems and population health that were recently renewed, and the 2 centers are CANOC, which sorry, Bob, if Bob Hogg, who's the lead of this, but for me, it's a cohort of cohorts. But this is, I think, a great resources for these areas, and the REACH program that are really program science, where the focus is on program science, and are located throughout Canada. and led by Sean Rourke. Yeah, led by Sean Rourke. And finally, there's also community-based research. As I said, this is quite unique to the HIV initiative, and with one Aboriginal stream, the AHA acronym, and the REACH CBR for community-based research. So these infrastructures are being supported in part or in great part by CIHR and are key for the advancement of research on HIV/AIDS. And now, one upcoming initiative, so this is an announcement, it's not yet, well, it is, we've discussed this for a number of time now. I think it has a very strong endorsement by the CHRAC board and also by every organization, stakeholder that we've been taking to. So there's great excitement about implementation science for the prevention of HIV, hepatitis C, and sexually transmitted infections. So this initiative will support research on the identification, adaptation, and scale-up of promising or effective interventions and development of multifaceted prevention programs. Il va y avoir deux composés à cette initiative-là. Dans un premier temps, il va y avoir I'm doing literal translation, which is very difficult. I don't have access to the French thing, but the adaptation grants which establish themes and identify interventions. So this is the first component. And when this is going, then there will be the possibility of expanding on component 2, implementation grants, and really one of the key features here is we will start to study programs at 4 or more communities. So really to try to compare the different approaches for implementation grants. So basically, you know, I'm a pillar 1 researcher, biomedical, so it took me some time to understand what was implementation research, and I had the great fortune of collaborating on many files with Nancy Edwards from the Institute of Population and Public Health. And I told her, oh, I think I get it now, is you have a phenotype in one mouse, but now you want to see whether in other species of mouse, in other strains of mouse, whether you'll have the same phenotype. So this is a little bit the way I see it, but really it's implementation. It doesn't mean because it works in one specific area that it will be easy to implement it in other areas, and you really have to compare those different phenomena. So, I think this is the last, but I think the most important slide. I'm very happy to see that I still have 3 minutes 14 to go. So, so this is, I think, the work of a number of individuals that, and 470 respond, a lot of public outreach, stakeholders, consultations, the CHRAC board that have been key. But we, I think the HIV research community, both at the knowledge creation, but also knowledge translation, are blessed by having good, dedicated team at CIHR to be able to move forward on this initiative. And, you know, since I started, there have been some fluctuation in the people that I've worked to, but this is great news because always those people were climbing the ladder to greater jobs. But 2 that have remained, and I've been very fortunate to work with them since I started, are Jennifer Gunning and Jane Hutchison. And I don't think that this initiative and all the opportunities and the possibilities that the HIV initiative would not be the same if they were not there, dedicated, working hard, and moving forward for the HIV initiative. So, merci. There's a question in the front of my right, so your left.
Hello? Oh, thank you so much for presenting the 2015-2020. But I will cast my question in French.
Très bien.
Marc, c'est très bien que j'ai vu que vous avez... c'est vraiment très... Pour la première fois, je vois que les instituts visent les infections par le VIH, l'hépatite C et les infections sexuellement transmissibles. Mais je ne vois pas la tuberculose.
Ouais.
Je n'ai pas fini ma question. Parce que le Canada est très divers. On n'a pas la même distribution pour quelqu'un qui est allé à travers le Canada. J'ai remarqué que dans ma région, qui est dans l'Ouest canadien, en Saskatchewan, où il y a des populations marginalisées. Et je reviens pour cela à la question qu'une personne a posée sur la recherche pour les autochtones. C'est une population spécifique, avec des besoins spécifiques, avec des méthodes de recherche qui sont contrairement inhabituelles ou différentes aux nôtres. Il faut en tenir compte. Mais je reviens à la question. Pourquoi la tuberculose n'est pas dans le...
Très bien. Donc, maybe just for the benefit of most people in the room, I'll answer in French, but just repeat the question in English so that our colleague here was pleased to see that there was an initiative on HIV, that it was also that we discussed about Hep C, that we discussed about STIs, but why not tuberculosis, which is also a very important problem, that there's in the social determinants, there are is it okay if I answer in English? Yeah, okay. So within the social determinants of health, there's many similarities, I would say, with the tuberculosis and other types of disease. So tuberculosis is an important area of research at CIHR. It's not encompassed within the HIV initiative, but we do invest more than $5 million a year on tuberculosis research. Mind you, maybe not all about the social determinants of health that you're describing. A lot has to do with pathogenesis and target discoveries. But in the room right now, we have the luxury of having Malcolm King, the scientific director here of the Institute of Aboriginal and Population Health. And Malcolm is leading an initiative on pathways to health equity in Aboriginals. And within this initiative, which is a lot about implementation science, a lot about program science, there's 4 exemplars, and one of those 4 exemplars is tuberculosis. And they're looking really at some of the social determinants related to tuberculosis. So I will encourage you very much to discuss with Malcolm here, who will provide further details. But mind you, the Institute of Infection and Immunity is also very interested in tuberculosis research.
Thanks. I also appreciate the beauty and the architecture of the new strategic plan and how it encompasses things that, of course, I care about a lot. But I just want to comment or mention that, you know, whenever anybody applies for any grant stream, the philosophical principles of the KTE architecture and community involvement in all phases of research are requirements for your application. And the nice thing about the way CIHR does those things is because those philosophies have real content. There's real substance in there. I think most people feel quite comfortable in the community engagement in KTE for some of the circles that you articulated, but when it comes to basic science, I think we're all very struggling. You know, at OHTN in November, there was a conference devoted to this issue of communication between basic scientists and community. And one of the things it illustrated was this tremendous hunger and appetite among people who are living with HIV affected to engage with scientists, not just as a matter of education, but of real interaction and of ways to do that. And certainly in the work that I'm trying to do with Eric and others on cure research, which is not the easiest topic in the world, we're really just getting off the ground and learning how to talk about those things with each other in ways that really add to the research. It's not an easy problem. So my comment or my request, or I don't even know what I'm asking for, is that there's a history of capacity building that has occurred in some of the other kinds of research that have occurred that really needs to be bolstered or added to when we talk about basic science, for which I think people really, like I say, have a great hunger to engage with.
Yeah, I'll take that as a comment, so not as a question, and I cannot agree more than what you're saying. Yes. But are we, okay, last question, and then maybe we start the, well, you're the chair, sorry. Not you, okay, please.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, Marc. Je ne parle pas français, but so I'll ask my question in English. Thank you very much. Very, very nice presentation. I'm Joel Kettner. I'm at the ICID, which we host the National Collaborating Center for Infectious Diseases and the Alliance Coordinating Office that you mentioned for CHVI. The reason I'm mentioning that is that we are struggling and have struggled with the metrics to determine whether these goals that you described are being met. And you mentioned you're working on metrics. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you're going to tackle one of the more difficult problems of metrics with knowledge translation, which is the work that we as knowledge translators do that only can go so far, but then the uptake and the implementation, maybe by governments or health systems, et cetera, is beyond our control. You got a pretty ambitious set of goals there that expect the implementation right down to reducing transmission of disease, et cetera, et cetera. So you understand my question, I'm sure. What kind of metrics are you thinking of towards deciding whether you've reached your lofty goals?
Yeah, great question, because this is something that at CIHR now we're taking very actively, a proactive demonstration of how we want to measure that. I mean, there are discussions at Science Council almost on a monthly basis about this specific metric measurement. So there's a team right now that is developing some of the possibilities of moving forward that are being led by David Peckham. And really, there are challenges like just attribution. So how much is the funding that we're doing counting? And I don't think it will ever be possible to put a percentage on something, but because you know, for having an impact on, for instance, the epidemics on HIV/AIDS, it's clearly not the single funding of CIHR that will make the difference. It's the collective actions, and this is a challenge. So we're trying to look and to move forward. But clearly, for metrics, we're not only they are the easy ones that I think most people can do about publications, citations. There's almost as many index now as the letters in the alphabet to try to look at this. But really, the impact and measuring impact, I think you can, if you have a good ground level of where you are and what you have achieved, I think you can certainly see that something has happened. Now, what's the contribution of the initiative that we're doing? I think there are professionals that are starting to look into this. It's an emerging science, so it's the science of science, and I think I'm not the best place to comment on this, but this is something that is really behind our mind to try to look at this. And I'm looking here at the CSO, whether she would like to complement what I'm saying on how at CIHR, how important that is. I think that but how we're moving forward that maybe would complement what I'm saying.
Well, actually, is this on? Not yet.
If you speak, I think it comes magically.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I think that's the appropriate beginning to the answer. So basically what David and the team has done together with other members of Science Council is use the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences return on investment framework to create a toolbox of metrics that go all the way from the short-term kind of indicators, health indicators, as well as science indicators like publications, as Mark mentioned, through to the much harder to measure. But if we're good at articulating what the indicators are, so that we have the baseline now and measure against them, then we will have been able to demonstrate at least some kinds of impacts related to the, or of outcomes related to the impacts that you're talking about. So you do have, I think, around the HIV/AIDS initiative, a framework, or you will be creating a framework that will choose from that toolbox of metrics and augmented by other health indicators to measure the outcomes of your initiatives. And I'm saying that now because there is no strategic initiative at CIHR that can be launched without having the measurement framework and the indicators around it. That's a new policy, but that's the reality. So if it hasn't been created, I'm looking at Jennifer and Jane. If it hasn't been created yet, you'll be working with David's team to create it.
Please feel free to ask either of the speakers questions. Eric?
I can yell. So, you know, with the disbandment of... Thank you. It's a little easier. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, in the early 90s, you had the disbandment of NHRDP and it rolling into the MRC, and that was sort of the strategic fund for HIV/AIDS research. And that created a big problem, especially for junior investigators getting funding in HIV/AIDS at that time. And I'm just concerned with the strategic plan in regards to now with the project grants and the foundation grants, in particular for junior investigators, that previously with the operating grants, you provided a certain amount of money from the HIV strategic plan into those initiatives. And now I gather that's not occurring in terms of providing some monies from the strategic plan into the project grants in particular on HIV/AIDS.
Oh, he's talking about PA.
Yeah.
He's talking about PAs.
Yeah.
So there's 2 points. One is in the foundation scheme currently, there's a plateau. There are many new investigators that are applying and that went through phase 1 to phase 2.
So 20% of the 467 applications that went through to stage 2, so 34% of the applications that came in have gone to stage 2. 20% of those 467 that went to stage 2 are from new investigators. That is defined within years 1 to 5 of their first independent appointment.
And this is equal to the
Actually, it's
usual
higher.
program. Yeah.
No, it's higher
Yeah, okay.
than the historical average in our current OGP, which is great news for new investigators. The historical data in the OGP is 15% of applications. So we won't go below 15% at the end, but right now, new investigators are tracking higher than historically.
So I'm sorry, I appreciate the answer, and I made a really bad question in terms of clarification.
The PA part of the question is...
Yeah,
yes.
so the actual strategic investment into HIV/AIDS, which is about 10 million, or I forget the number.
$21 million.
21 million in that section of the pie. There was a large amount of that allocated into the open competition previously. Is that true?
It is true that through the priority announcements, especially in the biomedical field, that there was an important proportion that was going to priority announcement.
Right. So I'm just curious as to the plans forward, because I've heard that in the new operating grants that there won't be priority announcements that will be HIV specific, and I just a clarification, because I don't really know.
And you are correct that they won't be in the coming years priority announcements, and this is something that we discuss at CHRAC on 3 times a year, because we have 3 meetings a year, and this is going to be on the CIHR initiative at CIHR with the help of CHRAC and the community to move forward with a plan that will lead to the funding of research in the field of HIV, but mind you, of strategic research, because there's still the open pie of that is 50% of the funding that will be according to the same rules as we had before.
So I'm just going to answer Eric's. It's Jonathan Angel here. So I'll answer Eric, your question. Eric Arts, your question. So the decision to eliminate priority announcements was a CAHR decision. So priority announcements were eliminated across the board. It was recognized at CHRAC that HIV researchers benefited greatly from that, which may not have been true across CAHR, but it was certainly true for for HIV researchers and across pillars. And that's something we've discussed, as Mark said, multiple times, and that's something that we need to address with initiative dollars on how to address what is clearly what is felt as a loss to the research community.
Is it? Behind, I think. Behind.
I can't.
Hi, we're going to make echoes now, but I had the same question. I'm a new investigator in HIV Hep C research, and I had the same pointed questions when we were applying for those foundation grants, was why weren't there designated investments into a foundation-style program, career-driven or longer-term support for researchers through the foundation schemes from the separate initiatives, like designated dollars. What's wrong with having designated dollars for a 7-year foundation-style grant from a given initiative? Is that not a strategic initiative to support foundation grants in particular tracks?
Well, it's the open program, so I mean, within the strategic envelope, there's a number of things that one can do and can be flexible, and these are things that we can certainly discuss at CHIRAC, but there's a fundamental difference between the strategic envelope and the open envelope, and the open, the project scheme and the foundation scheme are really within the open envelope, so it's really bottom up. So, but certainly this is, I think Jane and Jennifer are taking good notes, and we'll see how we can think and try to see whether there's a possibility of moving forward on this.
Yeah, the other Jane will just say, just to reinforce, investigator-initiated is bottom-up. And I will hope, as I showed in that one slide, that half of the HIV/AIDS funding at the moment is coming from the investigator-initiated envelope. So in my hopes would be that HIV/AIDS researchers are moving forward in the stage 2 of the foundation scheme and will get a foundation scheme awards. I have not, because I'm firewalled from that part of the process, as I should be until we get to the end, I don't know what the breakdown, beyond the pillar breakdown that I showed you, I don't know what areas are really represented in those pools. But that is information that we'll be able to provide at the end of the process. And there'll be nothing hidden about it. I told you that in my mind, CIHR data needs to be out there and we all need to understand it. So we'll look at it. If there were huge gaps in particular areas coming out of the foundation scheme or the project scheme for that matter, then that would feed into the strategic initiatives as needing capacity or needing special attention. And that's where I would expect the strategic HIV/AIDS money to come into play. So stay tuned. We just finished stage 2 adjudication, and mid-July the results of the foundation scheme will be put out.
I just have one quick question. For the pilot foundation scheme, my understanding was that some of the reviewers were also applicants. Is that policy going to still continue, or has CHR reevaluated that policy?
Thanks for the question. So yes, it is true that at stage 1 of the first pilot of the foundation scheme, applicants were able to be peer reviewers. Using 2 bits of philosophy. One, we are not committee-based, we're application-focused, and so there were, and no applicant would get their own application. We were using, and there were processes for that, though I will admit there was tweeting going on. There was tweeting going on that, oh wow, that applicant gets to rank his or her own application at the top. No way could that happen. But in a ranking world, and I didn't show those data, but in a ranking world, there's almost no statistical probability that that a single reviewer with 5 reviewers per application and the range of applications they had to review, that they could influence even the ranking of their own application. So that was one bit of the philosophy. Second philosophy was there has been a study done by the National Science Foundation in the US to say, when do you get the best reviewing? Is it when applicants are also peer reviewers, or if you firewall applicants from peer review? And the conclusions of that experiment of theirs was you get better peer reviewing when applicants are actually peer reviewers. I think the philosophy being, if you want damn good reviewing of your own application, then you're going to do a good job of reviewing others. However, that was an experiment, and it upset a lot of people for us to do that. So at stage 2, we did not use any peer reviewers who were also applicants, and we've chosen, while we get through transition, we've chosen for the second pilot not to use applicants as peer reviewers. And then we'll reevaluate it. So thanks for asking the question, though, because I know it caused a lot of concern, and I think it was misplaced concern, but I get it. I understand why people thought it.
Last question, Keith. Please keep it brief.
Yeah, sure. So Mark, there's, so obviously you described where with the open competitions and the pilot, or sort of the foundations, and the projects grants. But then we have the strategic funds. So we have there's still all that HIV strategic fund that we don't know how it's going to get spent yet. CIHR obviously is going to be important in informing and helping to decide how that's going to get doled out. But how can the rest of us have input into how that HIV initiative money will get utilized?
Okay, very good. So I want to reassure you first, Keith, that every cent that is within the strategic envelope is being spent on HIV research. So I think so far we've been doing a great job. But it is true that now that priority announcements won't be available, there will be some strategic decision that will be taken to move forward. But so far, I just provide few examples of the strategic envelope on what it's used for. One was mucosal immunity and HIV vaccine. One was men's and health. Now we'll have implementation science. There are discussions at CIHR on the directions that we're going to make, because it's quite prescriptive also which areas or which pillars we have to cover. And now we know that there's upcoming, we have some funding to do into biomedical and clinical, and we want to move forward on this. And CIHR, the members, the researchers, and the community individuals that are part of CIHR are representing all of you, and you certainly can comment. And you all know the address of Jennifer, Jane, even myself, and we'll be pleased to bring not recommendations, but at least suggestions to the CIHR board members to try to move forward on this. And Jennifer wants to say something very important that I'm forgetting.
Do you want to?
No. Well, okay, so I'll translate. She was speaking to me in French. So basically, and I think it's true, but we're consulting all the time on the one hand, and we are having very frequently webinars, some of which are planned for implementation science very soon, actually May 8th. So this is a scheme that we will continue to use to be able to interact with the research community and the stakeholder community.
Last question. I have their cell phone numbers anyways, if you need to contact them afterwards.
My question is in relation to the CBR component. Since it was moved from PHAC or from Health Canada many years ago, it never seems to increase in amount. So if you combine the Aboriginal arm and the general stream, it's almost the same amount of money all those years. So the question is, will it ever increase? The other piece around the CBR component is those of us who are located within community-based settings who do research there, money can never come directly to our organizations. And this is what CBR is all about,
Yes.
location within community-based organizations, but we can't get the money. So do you see this changing?
Okay, so I'll talk about the increase in envelope and about the whether there are some rules of who can receive funds, and maybe Jane wants to elaborate on this, but there are specific rules, and if you're not eligible, it has to go through another organizations. But we had a number of arrangements of deals with some communities to be able to directly fund them. But I understand that this is a challenge, but this is a little bit, but I'll talk about the increasing the envelope. So basically, one approach that we are using, and I think the implementation science approach that we want to use here, and that this is going to be the next big initiative that we're going to do. This is exactly to link researchers with community, with decision makers, policies, regulators. It's really involving the community. So yes, the envelope will increase, not because the teams that are being looked at will involve very much the community. The initiative that Malcolm is leading on the pathways to equity and Aboriginal is exactly also that, this linkages, this interactions with the community. So yes, the envelope for community-based research is increasing because the span of research activities that happens at CIHR is increasing. Now for the specific rules, I think it's just that there are some organizations that can receive funds from CIHR and others not. So that I think is maybe a discussion that you need to have with the finance people to see how, and the legal people, and how you can try to arrange those things so that CIHR money could be transferred if possible.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We'll have to cut it off there. I'd like to thank both of the speakers for taking the time to come tell us about the current and future plans at CIHR. And thank you all for coming and taking part and participating in this presentation.